The day my wife told me, living together with you is holding me back from achieving my dreams. She said it while stirring sugar into coffee she never drank. She kept her eyes on the spoon, circling the cup like she was polishing something invisible. I remember that more than the words. The metal tapping porcelain. The tiny, careful sound of someone trying not to be cruel. I thought there would be a fight. There wasn't. I asked, "So what are you saying?" She sighed like I'd made things difficult by needing plain language. "I'm saying I need space. I'm saying I can't become who I need to become here." Then she took one suitcase, left the mugs, and forgot her umbrella by the door. I let her go. That was 6 months ago. Now I spend most days in my brother's appliance repair shop, pretending I chose this life. We fix washing machines, refrigerators, old ceiling fans people refuse to replace because they still have good years left. I understand that kind of loyalty more than I used to. The shop sits on a narrow street between a locksmith and a stationery store. By noon, the place smells like hot wires, dust, and machine oil. By evening, my shirt carries it home with me. I like the predictability of broken things. They stop working, you find out why, you fix them or you don't. People aren't that decent. She first walked in on a Tuesday afternoon carrying a blender base wrapped in a linen dish towel. I noticed her hands before anything else. Long fingers, no rings, a thin silver watch. Calm hands. The kind that don't rush even when everyone else does. "Can someone look at this?" she asked. Her voice was low and steady. Not cold. Just economical, like she'd learned not to waste words on people who hadn't earned them. I took the blender from her. Depends what it did. It sparked, smoked, and then insulted me personally. I looked up. She was smiling, but only with one side of her mouth. That smile did something strange to the room. She was older than me by at least 20 years, maybe more. Mid-40s, maybe late 40s. It was hard to tell because she carried herself like age was private information. Dark hair pinned loosely at the back, a few silver strands she hadn't bothered hiding. Crisp, white shirt with sleeves folded once at the wrist. Jeans. Leather flats. Nothing loud, yet everything deliberate. "My brother usually handles small appliances," I said. "And where is your brother?" "Late." "Convenient." I almost smiled back. Almost. I set the blender on the counter and opened the casing. "Burned motor. Dead." "It's gone," I said. "Can you say that gentler? We had years together." I laughed before I could stop myself. It came out rusty, unfamiliar. She noticed. Something shifted in her face then. Not pity exactly. Recognition. "Tough year?" she asked. People usually ask what happened. They want details, gossip shaped like concern. She asked the question like she understood some stories don't need telling. Something like that. She nodded once and looked around the shop. Her eyes landed on the radio, the crooked calendar, the fan that clicked every third turn. "You should fix that fan," she said. "It still has good years left." That earned a fuller smile. She gave her name as Elena when I wrote the ticket. I told her mine. She repeated it softly, like testing whether it suited me. "Can I pick it up Friday?" she asked. "The blender's dead." "I know," she said. "I meant the estimate." There was a pause then. Not long. Long enough. Outside, a bus hissed to the curb. Someone shouted down the street. The shop suddenly felt too quiet, like all the noise had stepped back to listen. She reached for the claim slip at the same time I handed it over. Our fingers touched for less than a second. Warm skin. Cool watch band. Ridiculous. The things a lonely body notices. "Friday," I said. She folded the slip and tucked it into her pocket. "Try to smile before then. It changes your whole face." Then she walked out carrying nothing. I stood there holding the towel she'd wrapped around the broken blender, staring through the front window as she crossed the street without looking back. That night, I took the towel home by accident. I still haven't figured out if she forgot it, or left me a reason to see her again. Friday came with rain that never committed. The sky stayed swollen all day, threatening something heavier. I'd fixed the fan before opening, mostly so I'd have something to do with my hands. By 3 o'clock, I'd checked the front window 12 times. By 4, I told myself she wasn't coming. By 4:15, the bell above the door rang. Elena stepped in carrying a folded umbrella and the smell of wet pavement. "You repaired the fan," she said, glancing up before she even looked at me. You noticed? It stopped sounding like it regretted being alive. I tried not to grin. Failed. She was dressed differently this time. Dark sweater, hair loose from the rain, strands clinging near her neck. There were faint shadows beneath her eyes, the kind sleep doesn't fix. I handed her the estimate sheet for the blender. Honestly, replacing it costs less. I assumed that. Then why come back? She set the umbrella by the door and looked around the shop like the answer might be hanging on one of the shelves. I was nearby. It was a bad lie. Too neat. Too quick. I nodded like I believed it. My brother had gone to pick up parts, leaving just the two of us and the low hum of refrigerators waiting for repair. Rain ticked against the front glass. She wandered to a shelf stacked with old radios. Ran her fingers lightly over the dustless tops. Careful hands again. Controlled hands. You clean these, she asked. When business is slow. And when your mind is loud. I looked at her. She didn't turn around. Sometimes. She picked up a small radio, then set it back exactly where it had been. Useful habit. There was something strained in her voice. Not sadness. Fatigue, maybe. The kind that settles into a person slowly until they mistake it for personality. You look tired, I said before I could stop myself. That made her glance over. Bold. Sorry. No, she said quietly. Just accurate. She moved to the counter and rested both palms on it. Her nails were short, unpainted. One thumb rubbed the edge of the wood again and again. Long week? I asked. She gave a short laugh with no humor in it. Long marriage. The room went still. I hadn't seen a ring, but that meant nothing. Plenty of people removed symbols before they removed problems. I said nothing. She seemed grateful for that. After a moment, she straightened. Forget I said that. I probably won't. Her eyes lifted to mine then, direct and unreadable. That could be dangerous, she said. My throat felt dry. Remembering things. No. She reached for the estimate sheet. I should have stepped back. Instead, I stayed where I was while she signed the paper. Her handwriting was sharp and elegant, every letter certain of itself. When she finished, she looked at the old coffee machine in the corner. Does that thing work? Sometimes. Make me one. That wasn't a question. I know. I made two. She took hers black, held the warm cup in both hands, and closed her eyes after the first sip, like it was the first quiet moment she'd had all week. Then, softer than before, almost to herself, she said, I used to sit in cafes alone just to hear my own thoughts. And now, she opened her eyes. Now I hide in repair shops. We both smiled, but mine faded first. When she left, she paused at the door, turned back, and touched the towel still folded on the counter. You kept it, she said. I forgot. No, she said gently. You didn't. Then she walked into the rain, and this time she took the towel with her. A week passed before I saw her again. Long enough for common sense to recover. Long enough for me to remember she was married, older, complicated, and whatever existed between us mostly lived in pauses I was probably inventing. Then the storm came. By closing time, the street outside had disappeared behind sheets of rain. Water rushed along the curb carrying cigarette butts and leaves. My brother left early to pick up his daughter, shouting apologies over the weather. I stayed to lock up. The bell over the door rang just as I turned the sign to closed. Elena stood there damp at the shoulders, breathing a little harder than usual. Tell me you're not closing, she said. I'm closing. She stared at me. I unlocked the door wider. She stepped inside without thanking me, which somehow felt more intimate than gratitude. Her hair was wet, darker with rain. She carried no umbrella this time. Drops slid from the hem of her coat onto the floor. You walked in this? I asked. My car died 2 streets over. Your relationship with appliances is getting personal. That got a tired laugh. I found an old towel and handed it to her. She rubbed it over her hair, then her face, eyes closed for a second longer than needed. When she opened them, something in her seemed worn thin. Can I sit here for 10 minutes until it slows down? She asked. You can sit longer than that. The words came out too fast. She noticed. Said nothing. I made tea because coffee felt too sharp for the weather. We sat across from each other at the workbench between a dismantled toaster and a box of screws. Rain hammered the roof, so loudly we had to lean closer to hear. She wrapped both hands around the mug. Her fingers were pale from cold. "You always rescue stranded women?" she asked. "Only the ones who insult blenders. There are dozens of us." I smiled, then watched her smile fade first. Her phone lit up on the bench. She looked at the screen and turned it face down. Didn't answer. A minute later it buzzed again. Then again. "You should get that?" I said. "No." The way she said it ended the subject, but not the silence that followed. I looked at the ring. "Your husband." Her jaw tightened. "Soon-to-be ex, if paperwork ever catches up with reality." I hadn't expected relief to feel so ugly. "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be." She traced a ring-shaped mark on the mug with her thumb. "I stayed too long. That part was mine." The phone buzzed again. This time she switched it off completely. The shop felt smaller after that. She stood and moved to the front window. I joined her a moment later, leaving enough space to be decent and not enough to be comfortable. Cars hissed through flooded streets. Neon from the locksmith sign bled red across the glass. "I used to think endurance was noble," she said quietly. "Turns out sometimes it's just fear with better branding." I turned to look at her. She was already looking at me, close enough now that I could see the tiny crease near her mouth, the faint mascara shadow beneath one eye, the steadiness she wore like armor. "You don't seem afraid," I said. "That's because I practice." Her hand rested on the window ledge between us, mine beside it, not touching. The storm softened outside, but neither of us moved. She glanced at my mouth, so briefly I almost doubted it happened. Then she whispered, "If I stay another minute," and slid her fingers 1 inch closer to mine. Her fingers stopped just short of mine, not touching, just there, suspended like the decision itself was too heavy to finish. The storm outside had started to lose its anger. Rain still fell, but it sounded tired now, sliding instead of striking. The kind of quiet that makes you hear things you were avoiding. I should have moved back. I didn't. Neither did she. Elena kept her eyes on the glass, on the street beyond it, on anything that wasn't me. Her voice came softer than I expected. "What are we doing?" It wasn't sharp, not angry, not even scared, just tired of pretending there was an answer already formed somewhere. I didn't reply right away, because I didn't have one that didn't sound like a mistake. The workshop felt different now, not because anything changed, but because something had stopped holding its shape. Even the hum of the fridge units sounded like it was listening. "I don't know," I said finally. Honesty came out rough when I wasn't used to using it. She let out a breath through her nose, almost a laugh, but not quite. Her forehead leaned closer to the window for a second, like she needed the glass to keep her upright. "That's worse than anything," she said. I looked at her profile, the line of her cheek, the way she wasn't pretending to be calm anymore. "You came here," I said quietly. She turned her head slightly. "My car broke down." "That's not what I meant." A pause, long enough for me to regret speaking. Her hand lowered from the window ledge, slowly, like she was withdrawing something that had almost become real. "I keep doing this," she said. "Finding places where I can forget I have a life waiting somewhere else." "That's not fair to yourself," I said. "And you." Her eyes finally met mine. "What is this for you?" The question didn't sound like accusation. It sounded like fear wearing politeness. I swallowed. "I don't plan it," I said. "If that's what you're asking." "That's not what I'm asking." Silence again, this one heavier. She looked away first this time, toward the workbench, toward the scattered tools, toward anything that didn't look like an answer. Then, almost to herself, she said, "I haven't felt seen in a long time." That landed in the room like something dropped too carefully. I didn't move, didn't speak, because anything I said would either be too much or not enough. Her hand came back up slowly, not toward mine this time, but resting against her own arm like she was holding herself in place. "I shouldn't be here," she said. But she didn't leave. The air between us felt stretched thin, like it couldn't decide whether to break or hold. I shifted my hand slightly closer on the ledge. Not touching. Almost. Her eyes followed it. And then she said it, barely audible, like she hated the shape of the words as they left her. "If you move any closer, I won't know how to stop." The words didn't land like a confession. They landed like she had just admitted something she'd already lost years ago. "If you move any closer." I won't know how to stop. She didn't look at me after saying it. Not immediately. Like she was afraid my face would confirm something she didn't want to name. The rain outside had almost stopped completely now. What remained was just dripping from the roof edge in slow, uneven intervals. Each drop felt louder than it should have. I should have stepped back. I didn't. Instead, I asked the one thing I probably shouldn't have. Stop what? That made her finally turn. And there it was, something unguarded slipping through. Not desire. Not confusion. Recognition of danger. I left someone once, she said quietly. No build-up. No warning. Just that. The workshop felt colder even though nothing changed. He didn't ask me to stay, she continued. He just kept hoping I would become someone I wasn't ready to be. Her fingers pressed into her own arm harder now. I told myself I was growing, that I was choosing myself. It sounded noble when I said it out loud. She let out a small breath, like she was tired of her own explanation. But I didn't stop missing him until it was too late to matter. I didn't interrupt, because anything I could say would be decoration over something already cracked. She reached into her coat pocket then, not dramatically, not slowly for effect, just like she had forgotten it was there until that moment. A folded piece of paper, worn at the edges. She hesitated before opening it. I kept this, she said, even after everything. She unfolded it halfway, then stopped. Didn't show me. Just looked at it. Her voice dropped lower. It's a note he left on my table the morning he moved out. She didn't read it. Didn't need to. Her thumb smoothed the crease in the paper like muscle memory. I thought I was strong for leaving, she said. But I think I was just faster than regret. My chest felt oddly tight, like the air had shifted pressure without warning. I looked at her properly then. Not the way I had been. Not as something new entering my life, but as someone carrying something still living inside her. I'm not him, I said quietly. The words came out before I could soften them. She closed her eyes for a second. I know. That was the problem. She did. The silence after that wasn't empty. It was crowded, with comparisons neither of us had agreed to, but both of us could feel. Her hand lowered from her arm slowly. The paper stayed in her grip. Then she looked at me again, and her voice broke just slightly at the edge. I don't think I came here by accident anymore. My hand was still on the ledge, close to hers, closer than before. And this time, when she didn't pull away, I realized something that made my stomach drop quietly. She wasn't trying to stop me anymore. She kept the paper in her hand even after the silence settled. Not gripping it anymore, just holding it, like letting go would make the room tilt. I waited for her to say something else. Something that would explain where this was supposed to go, or stop it from going anywhere at all. She didn't. Instead, she folded the note again. Slowly, carefully, like it deserved better than urgency. I didn't come here looking for this, she said. Her voice was steadier now, not distant, just honest in a way that didn't try to protect either of us. I know, I said. That was all. No argument. No correction. No attempt to turn it into something cleaner. The rain had stopped completely. The world outside looked washed out, drained of color, like it had spent everything it had for the day. She stepped away from the window first. Not away from me, just away from the edge we'd been standing on. I finally moved too, circling the workbench without thinking about it, until there was nothing between us except the space we were both aware of. Her eyes flicked to my hand again. This time, I didn't stop it halfway. I placed it on the counter, still not touching her, just closer than before. She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for longer than the conversation. I keep thinking I should be more afraid of this, she said. And are you? A pause. Then, softly, not the way I expected. That was when she finally stepped forward. Not a dramatic move. Not hesitation either. Just a decision that had been building long before today. Her fingers brushed mine. Once. Testing. Then stayed. Warm. Certain enough not to shake. Neither of us spoke for a while after that. The shop felt normal again in the strangest way. Tools on the bench. The faint smell of oil. A broken clock ticking in the corner that no one had bothered fixing. She sat down on the edge of the counter like it was the only stable thing left in the room. I stayed standing beside her, close enough that our shoulders nearly touched if either of us shifted wrong. She leaned her head slightly, not onto me, not fully, but just enough that the space between us stopped pretending it was separate. I didn't move away. Neither did she. Outside, a stray drop hit the metal roof and rolled off slowly, like the storm had one last thing to let go of. "I think I understand now," she said quietly. "What?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, even quieter, why I kept coming back. Her fingers tightened around mine once, not asking anything. Not pulling. Just there. We stayed like that until the light in the shop started to dim on its own, and neither of us thought to turn it on. Nothing was declared. Nothing needed to be. We just didn't move from each other. And when I finally realized I wasn't waiting for her to leave anymore, it felt less like a decision and more like something that had already finished happening. I don't remember the exact moment things became real. People always assume there's a line you cross. A sentence. A confession. Something clean you can point to later. But it wasn't like that. It was quieter. It was the absence of urgency. We didn't fix what we were. We didn't define it either. We just stopped pretending we had to solve it in one conversation. Elena didn't leave that night, and I didn't ask her to stay. She just sat there longer than she needed to, like her body had finally stopped arguing with itself. At some point, the paper she carried ended up back in her pocket. At some point, her hand stayed near mine without searching for distance anymore. I think that was the first real change. Not what we felt, but what we stopped doing. Stopping the running. Stopping the explaining. Stopping the instinct to turn every quiet moment into something that needed justification. She was still married on paper, still in the middle of a life that hadn't fully untangled itself. And I was still the man in a repair shop trying to convince himself broken things only mattered when they could be fixed. But something shifted anyway. Not in a dramatic way. In a practical one. Like two people slowly learning how to exist in the same space without bracing for impact. After that night, she started coming by more often. Sometimes with things that were actually broken. Sometimes with nothing at all. Sometimes she'd just sit while I worked, reading, or pretending to scroll through her phone without really looking at it. And I noticed things I didn't notice before. How she always loosened her shoulders after 10 minutes inside the shop. How she laughed more when she wasn't trying to be understood. How tired she had been for years before I ever met her. And she noticed things too. That I spoke less when I was thinking. That I didn't like people standing too far away when they talked to me. That I had a habit of fixing things twice just to be sure they stayed fixed. It wasn't romance in the way people usually expect it to look from the outside. There were no declarations. No grand turning points. Just two lives learning how to overlap without erasing each other. I think love, if it survives anything real, stops being loud. It becomes presence. It becomes the choice to stay in the room without needing to win it. Elena taught me that some people don't enter your life to complete it. They enter it to slow you down enough that you finally see it clearly. And I think I did the same for her. Not by saving her. Not by changing her path. But by not turning away when she finally stopped running long enough to breathe. Even now, when I think back to that first week, I don't think of chaos or confusion. I think of silence. The kind that didn't feel empty anymore. Just shared. And maybe that's what stayed with me most. Not the beginning. Not the ending. But the quiet in between where two people finally decide they don't have to disappear from each other to be safe. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?